What's up, y'all? Today I got a debate between Ben Shapiro and Destiny. Both of them do political streaming on different platforms. I always watch Destiny. I like Vosh. I watch a lot of political um, debates because I like to see people argue their points back and forth, especially since I don't know a lot about politics. I like to see who's making more sense and who has the most facts and who bases their arguments off opinions. And this Ben Shapiro is a good debater, and Destiny debates everybody. That's why I watch him mainly for his debates. But this is a debate on the economy under Trump versus under Biden. Now, it's hard to listen to people. People says, they come up with different things that they talk about on what causes the economy to be up or down. But I like facts, and I like when people say, well, this was the economy when this person came into office, and this is the economy when they left. So, I mean, it's cut and dry in my opinion. If you show me some facts, or you say that just put the economy in just 1 through 10. The economy was a 10 when this person came into office, and when he left, it was a 5. I mean, that tells me it went down. So I think a lot of this stuff, but it's facts over feelings. Should be, right? So let's see what they talk about. And this is on Lex Fridman show.
Because we can say the reality of it and we can look at opinion polls. What if we look at like legislative accomplishments? Like Biden is working on a 50-50 divided Senate. Donald Trump had both houses of Congress and the Supreme Court and got like no major legislation passed.
Well, I mean, he did lose Congress in 2018, but
sure. But prior to that, because we got the infrastructure bill, I think, in 1 year.
Okay, so he already. I mean, Destiny already threw a point out to say Trump had, the House and the Senate. Why didn't he get certain things passed? And then Ben Shapiro say, well, he didn't have it in 2018. Well, that's 2 years he was in office. I don't know. It's hard. It's like they go back and forth, but it's hard to really kind of cut through what they're saying.
Year, which Trump promised for his entire presidency, didn't get anywhere on
well,
it.
I mean, yes, his Republican base was not in favor of mass spending on infrastructure, and neither am I. So there's that. I think that's mostly a state and local
issue. But they were in favor of mass spending for tax cuts?
That's not a spending. I mean,
effectively it is, right? Like
effectively, it's not.
Well, if you're cutting tax receipts, but you're not changing the level of spending, like Biden did with the IRA.
I mean, again, we have a fundamental philosophical difference here. I think that when the government takes my money, that is not the government somehow being more fiscally responsible. And when the government allows me to keep my money, I don't see that as the government spending. I see that as my money, and the government is taking less of it.
That's great, but at the end of the day, the government is still going to be in a deficit spending, and they're going to have to borrow money from the Treasury.
Right, we have a spending problem. In other words, not a receipts problem, is the case that I'm making. The problem with Donald Trump is not that he lowered taxes. The United States has one of the most progressive tax systems on the planet. And in fact, if you wish to have a European-style social welfare state, what you actually need is to tax the middle class to death. I mean, the reality is that the top 20% of the American population pays literally all net taxes in the United States after state benefits and all of this.
Sure.
So if you actually wanted to have the kind of social welfare state that many liberals seem to want to have, like Northern Europe, for example, you'd actually have to tax people who make $40,000, $50,000, $60,000.
And I don't want that. I agree with that. So, but how do you explain the lack of legislation?
I mean,
if he's like such a uniter.
Because I think the Republican Party itself is quite divided. And I think that Trump's...
But isn't that his job? He's the head of the Republican Party. He's the Republican president of the United States.
I mean, again, I don't think that Joe Biden has passed wildly historic legislation.
The infrastructure bill was the largest,
So here's the problem. If you're a Republican, the only bills that you can get consensus on tend to be bills that either... that
Now, see, Destiny was finna go on a little... he was finna go on a little rant about the things that Biden did get passed, that some of them was historical and some of them were good. But he didn't let him. So he already cut him off on, He was finna explain what Ben Shapiro said Biden didn't do, and then Destiny was going to get into it, and he went back to what he was saying.
Let's be real about this. That are tax cuts because, as you would, I think, agree with.
Mhm.
When it comes to polling data, Americans constantly say they want to cut the government, and then the minute you ask them which program, they have
They
no
don't
idea
wanna
what
cut
they're
anything, of
right.
course.
Exactly, and so it's much harder to come up with a bill to cut things than it is to come up with a bill to add things. Which is why spending was out of control under Trump as well. But there are some Republicans who still don't want to spend on those things, right? So inherently, the task that this goes back to the first question. The task that Republicans think government is there to do is different than the task that Democrats think that government is there to do. So the way that the very metric of success for a Democratic president versus a Republican president, namely, for example, pieces of legislation passed, as a Republican, one of my goals is to pass nearly no legislation because I don't actually want the government involved in more areas of our life. I want to ask a couple questions on the foreign policy front.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Real quick. Just so, for instance, like Donald Trump wanted to punish China, and he wanted to bring microprocessor manufacturing to the United States. Biden did that with legislation, with the CHIPS Act. You talk about like spending being out of control, and I mean, I can agree with that. I think anybody that looks at the numbers has to agree with that. But why not pass legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act, which is at least like spending neutral, right? Like, why are there not bills where Donald Trump could take?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think that whenever the government says something is spending neutral, it rarely materializes that way. That is not going to be a spending neutral bill.
Sure, but there's a
Inflation
difference
Reduction
between
Act
like at least they say it's spending neutral versus this is a $500 billion bill over like 10 years.
I mean,
right?
but again, I don't see a tax cut as a matter of quote spending neutrality. The big problem is they keep spending, not that they are allowing.
Now, Ben Shapiro is not. He's not going back and forth with Destiny on actual policies that Biden has enacted or got passed through, signed off on, or whatever you want to call it. He's not pushing back on him on policies. He's still talking about general spending and why he doesn't like spending, and he doesn't want the government. He doesn't want big government. We gotta get taxes. How are we gonna spread this money out into different parts of the country? Infrastructure, police, teachers. I think we need more money across the board. We always find enough money to spend on different things like war, sending money to different countries, different stuff like that. But whenever we want to spend money on our people, then we don't have enough money for that. That's kind of crazy, right? When it's our tax dollars.
Allowing me to keep the money that I earn as a matter of quote spending neutrality. The big problem is they keep spending, not that they are allowing me to keep the money that I earned and they did not earn. But
okay, so then just to understand, so if somebody just did massive like reductions in tax receipts, so tax cut after tax cut after tax cut, but they didn't change spending at all, you wouldn't consider that like an increase in deficit spending or out of control spending. You would just say they're just tax cuts.
No, the opposite. I would consider it a wild. I would consider it a wild overspending.
Okay.
Meaning
so then
that,
was it under Trump then when he did the tax?
I mean, the deficit spending, by the way, under Biden is way worse than it was under.
Of course, but we're in post-COVID, right?
COVID ended effectively. I mean, you live in Florida. COVID effectively ended in the state of Florida by the middle of 2021.
Yeah,
I mean, even if you're a vaccine fan, by like April, May of 2021, there was wide availability of vaccines, whether or not you like the vaccines.
Yeah.
And at that point, we were done.
I agree, but like we're in a post, like how many trillions of dollars have been dumped in worldwide that are.
And see, that's another thing about Republicans that or people on the right. I don't want to say Republicans because you got conservative Republicans, you got far right people. The people on the right, they deal in cut and dry. Like if you say COVID, if you say this is because of COVID, they'll say, well, COVID ended. And you're like, yeah, it ended, but we still dealing with circumstances is a straight result of COVID, and we still dealing with that stuff today. Price gouging, supply chain stuff. So we still dealing with stuff from COVID. Just because COVID ended, don't mean we're not still dealing with it. And that's what people talk about with a lot of stuff. But see, Republicans or right-wing people, they just want to say, well, that ended. Everything after that should be no, it's still you still having effects from that time.
Are like leading to inflation, right? The inflation is like a worldwide issue right now because of the economy shutting down for a year or two. It's not like those effects are gone in 1 year, right? COVID might be gone, but the after effects of all the stimulus spending and the unemployment and everything.
The definition of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. So pouring more money on top of that makes for more inflation. That's what it does.
Sure, I agree. But like, there's also the definition of when do you deficit spend is when economies are headed for recessions, right? Rather than when economies are doing really well, like they were under Trump, and he was deficit spending. Whereas Biden can at least make the argument that I ought to be deficit spending because the economy is heading for potential recession. Right?
So here's the thing: I don't think that the economy was actually headed for recession. In fact, if you look at the economic statistics,
every economist said that it was.
Okay,
they're still saying that there's like a recession coming, right?
Right, but that was largely because of the after effects of inflation. Meaning, if you inflate the economy, what you are going to end up doing is bursting a bubble, and then when that bubble bursts, you'll get a recession. I mean, that was the basic idea, right? The question was whether you're going to get a soft landing. But if you actually look at, for example, the employment statistics or the economic growth statistics in the United States, what they look like under the last year's Obama and then Trump, I mean, this is what the chart looks like. It looks like this, and then it hits March of 2020, it goes like that,
yeah,
right, and then by like September, it bounces back up, right? It's a V-shaped recovery, and then it starts to peter out.
Sure,
and
a lot because of the American Recovery Plan, right? That Biden did as well.
I mean,
4 million jobs. Yeah.
No, I'm not going to attribute it to that because the rates of growth in job growth from September, October, November were actually very similar to the rates of job growth after Joe Biden took office.
So, he's not going to fight with him on no specific thing that Destiny's talking about because he knows Destiny has the facts on that and he knows he's right. So he's just gonna keep talking about generalities. Well, it's up, and now and it's hard. It's hard when somebody does that because everything Destiny's throwing out to him, he's not. He don't have a comeback for. He's just gonna say, well, and then when he said, well, Biden did this because of this, he said, well, I can't attribute that to that. Nothing Biden did. He's not gonna give him that. And it's hard having a discussion with somebody who's not gonna, if y'all can agree on stuff that was a direct correlation of something Trump or Biden did, you're not gonna give them that. Then how you gonna have an honest conversation? But I like to see the back and forth. I'm gonna get some more clips and go over them because I like to learn, especially about politics, man. Ever since Trump came in office, it's like politics is like so explosive and it just makes you want to learn more about it, especially how the country runs, how legislation is passed and done, man, and how that legislation affects us. It's crazy, man. But it's fun and it's good to learn this stuff. So thank y'all for watching. Y'all like, subscribe. Thank y'all.